I want to say that this is one of the darkest days in our country for the last few years. Um, Today is a day that will go down in our books of infamy. As you know, we, as Azimio Coalition, had applied to the government or notified the government that we are going to hold peaceful demonstrations from last week Monday, and this week Monday and Thursday. We did everything required under our constitution and the law. To our dismay, last evening, the Inspector General of Police declared our demonstrations unlawful, illegal, and said that they are not going to be tolerated, completely violating our rights as an organization. We did not want any kind of violence. We did not want any destruction of property at all. It was supposed to be a peaceful demonstration, and it was not going to take a very long time. Unfortunately, the violence meted out by the police has resulted in the death of one person in Kisumu, has also ended up with injuries, so many other people who were hit by projectiles thrown by the police, and also loss of property. We have seen invasion of private property today. The farm of the former president, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, was invaded by goons hired by the government. And they went there with power saws, cut mature trees, and later on this evening they've set the whole farm on fire. They were having some fake title deeds indicating that the land had been parceled out to certain individuals. To everybody's consternation, there was no police on site. All this exercise took place and not a single police officer went around to try to restrain these people, these invaders. At the same time, another group of goons was sent to my company, the manufacturing company, East Africa Spectre Limited, industrial area, and they attacked the property, pelted it with stones. They were supposed to invade and take away the product. We produce LPG gas cylinders in that factory. Unfortunately, some of our security officers, our youth, went and confronted them. That's how the property was saved. So this, therefore, spells serious doom to our country. We see that our democratic institutions are under attack, and that Kenya is on the brink of serious catastrophe which can actually test the very foundation of this nation.
Our apologies, we are close by the river, so frogs and other animals at night. But let's go back to today's attacks. Why would the property of the former president Uhuru Kenyatta be targeted? We know he supported you at the expense of his former deputy William Ruto, who is now president. But why now? Why attack his property? Is he supporting you in any way in the current protests you're calling for?
There have been unfounded allegations that Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta is funding the current protests that have been carried out by Azimio Coalition, One Kenya. But nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, Uhuru Kenyatta is a member of this movement. He is still the chairman of this movement. But he has restrained himself. He's actually confined himself to continental duties assigned to him by the African Union and also by the regional leaders. For example, conflict resolution in the Congo, in the DRC, and also in Ethiopia. So he has not had any time to engage in domestic issues at all. Neither has he commented or talked about what is going on in the country. But the president and his deputy have continued to attack on Uhuru Kenyatta and try to bring him into the current dispute that we have with the government.
Now, I'm looking at the attacks at Spectra at almost the same time that the farm was being attacked, Northlands, and I'm wondering, do they strike you as premeditated or sporadic?
They are planned. This cannot be accident. They've been talking about it. They have gone public and said that they are going to invade Uhuru's farm because they are saying that the father grabbed that land.
By they, you mean who?
The government, that is the president and his deputy, from the public, and therefore that it is public property, and they are going to take it back to the public ownership. But the history is very stubborn. Kenyans who are around know that that farm used to belong to a Mzungu, that is a white farmer, who sold it to the late president in the 60s. The white man was leaving. It's one of those white settlers who had come to the country. So Mr. Kenyatta bought that land from an owner, and it was never a public property at all, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I'm aware. But this also put to question the sanctity of property, respect for private property as enshrined in the Constitution. You see, if you're invading now Uhuru's farm, where is the borderline? Where's the end? What stops you tomorrow from invading so-and-so's the farm and the other farm and the other farm and so on? Where are you going to also look at those farms which are owned by the whites? The British were still there in Laikipia, somewhere in the Rift Valley, at the coast. Where's the end to all this? You see, we have a rule of law which need to be respected by each and every government. If there's a dispute over a piece of land, because the courts are available, to go and settle those disputes. But never in our history, from the time of independence, the government of Jomo Kenyatta, the government of Daniel Arap Moi, government of Mwai Kibaki, and Uhuru Kenyatta himself, have we ever had a situation like this? This is a very, very serious situation indeed.
Now, the property of the powerful politicians will be discussed, but others will also point to the destruction of private property of the ordinary citizens. We have had cars vandalized, we've had people robbed, even journalists were attacked today. And some of those people who are conducting or carrying out these attacks were people demonstrating in your name. Do you take your responsibility for those attacks?
Not at all. What happened today? Today was supposed to be a peaceful demonstration. Our Constitution and Article 1 says that the power in the Republic of Kenya, sovereignty that is in the hand of the people of Kenya. They can either exercise it directly or through their elected leaders. So we were actually invoking that article in our Constitution, read together with Article 37 of our Constitution, which gives our people the right to picket, right to present petitions, right to demonstrate, so long as it is peaceful. And then the laws, the now subsidiary laws, require that you notify the police so that the police can provide security. And we did all this. What we did was, last week they said the police had not been adequately notified. This time, we actually wrote a letter, not only to the Inspector General of the Police, but to the officer who is in charge of Nairobi County Police Commissioner. And then we also individually wrote to all the police stations within the city of Nairobi that we are going to have this peaceful demonstration so that they could provide security. So we complied with the law. Unfortunately, the Inspector General unilaterally last evening and declared this demonstration illegal. And then they dispatched police officers in residential areas around the town. People would have seen police officers fighting with the residents in Mathare, in Kibra, in Kawangware, all over the place. Some people could not even go to work, those who didn't want to come to demonstrations, because they were basically blocked from leaving their residences. And then the city center, where we were supposed to converge, was also declared a no-go zone. The shops were closed, so people were not working at all today in the city. This is not responsibility of us. This is the responsibility of the police. Police must squarely take responsibility for destruction of property that took place today. It was completely uncalled for.
But there are those who will look at the pictures of protesters holding stones, hurling them in the direction of the police and even at some citizens. And then they'll say the Constitution provides for people who are peaceful and unarmed. Would you not say that you're stretching the meaning of peaceful demonstrations if we do see protesters carrying stones?
There's what is called offensive violence, and there's what is called defensive violence. The two are not the same. Who was the provocateur in this? The police went and basically sealed the residences. People could not come out. They were throwing tear gas at the people within their compounds. So people therefore now came out to defend themselves. They wanted to get out. And that's why they were actually throwing stones at the police. So those two kinds of violence are not the same. One is offensive, one is defensive.
Will you at least condemn those who are mugging civilians, some with daggers on the streets of Nairobi, who are not even the government and who are somehow caught in everything?
We were on record. In fact, I issued a statement yesterday that some goons have been hired by the deputy president and two members of parliament whom I named, and that they had been brought here, and we also even named the residences where they're being kept. One is a former cabinet minister, one is still a current cabinet minister. And we showed, we also mentioned the kind of weapons that they had been given. And they were supposed to cause mayhem today. And some of them actually were released today. So the kind of violence you saw was being perpetuated by these characters, not our people at all. We cannot take responsibility for that.
And today I also want to speak about the attack on journalists, which was very unfortunate. We had the cases of police forcing some to delete the videos. We had cases of 2 arrested, and even a press card was damaged. And there'll be a lot of fingers pointing at the government, even on its rhetoric towards media freedom. But we also remember that some time back you also called for a boycott of one of the newspapers whom you were unhappy with. And that those would be wondering whether Raila Odinga was known to be a friend of the media can now also be part of those who are targeting the media, because previously we've known that when such rhetoric comes to politicians, the journalists do get attacked. Do you think your rhetoric could have played a role in the attacks on journalists today?
Not at all. And you really need to understand that statement in context. People just say that this media is partly owned by the people in power, and therefore it has been very biased in its reporting, particularly editorial coverage of our movements. That's where some people said, let our people not read this media, because that is a democratic right. You can say, I'm not going to listen to this radio station, I'm not going to watch this TV station because I don't like it. It is biased. That's the freedom that individuals have. But after reviewing that position, we decided that the best thing to do was to write to the Media Council and make a complaint there so that they can have an opportunity to be heard. That's what we did. We're not really at war with any media houses at all. Yeah. We want people to have the freedom to read, to listen, and to critique wherever the media is concerned. But it is very unfortunate that journalists have been targeted, particularly by the police officers today, and have been injured. We want to condemn that kind of act of thuggery in the strongest terms possible. It is not part of our movement. We are a very democratic movement. We believe in the freedom of expression, that I may not agree with what you have to say, but I shall defend unto death your right to say it. That is actually what governs our position.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's come back for the real reason why you are calling for countrywide protests twice a week. You have issues with the cost of living, as many Kenyans do. You also have concerns about the formation of the new electoral commission which will preside over the elections in 2027. But perhaps more controversially is your stand that William Ruto's government is illegitimate and you want it out. There are a lot of people asking you, where is this evidence? Because you presented your case in court, and the courts validated Ruto's election and threw your case out. So then how do you want President William Ruto to leave office, if not, as some people suggest, a coup?
First, the issue of the cost of living is universal. It is the constitutive factors are external and also domestic. Many countries, actually, almost all countries in the world are affected by this global recession. We went through the COVID pandemic, and then we have also this war, Russia-Ukraine, which has actually created inflation worldwide. Many countries, or most countries, have actually responded differently to this. US brought even a special act of parliament to deal with it. Brazil, Chile, Japan, Israel, many European countries have responded by trying to protect jobs and also creating subsidies to cushion their people from the adverse effects of this global recession. So we used to have this during the President Uhuru's time. But this regime, when it came to power, it removed some of those subsidies. And this has caused a serious suffering to most of our people. Essential commodities, the food prices have actually skyrocketed.
The president, to be fair, said that these subsidies were not trickling down to the people. That's why he removed them, that they were benefiting a few pockets.
But as you can see, the discontent that is there in the country today shows that actually he was wrong, that they were actually bringing benefit to the people. The people are now suffering seriously. To the second point of the electoral dispute, we are talking about electoral justice. And here we are not just talking about the result of last elections. We're talking about elections generally in this country. And this is not a crisis only in Kenya. It is continental wide. That's why I'm being told that your battle is not just a Kenyan battle. It's a battle all over Africa, the issue of rigging of elections. Yes, elections were held in Kenya, and the presidential results were declared on the 15th of August. That is nearly 1 week after the polling day. But you had noticed that day that we had an electoral commission consisting of 7 members. Only 3 members, 2 members rather, agreed with the chairman. 4 members of that commission said they did not agree with the result being announced by the chairman. And they walked away from the tallying center and went and addressed a press conference at the Serena Hotel in town, saying that they do not own those results. They disagreed. The results were declared by the chairman and 3, meaning that it was a majority ruling. Then, after that, we decided to go to the Supreme Court to challenge the results. To our surprise and consternation, the Supreme Court upheld the results which had been announced by the Electoral Commission, despite the fact that if it was the Supreme Court itself, if 3 judges out of 7, no, so 4 judges out of 7 had disagreed, that matter would be lost. See, but here the same Supreme Court was applying double standards, agreeing with the ruling of minority. So in other words, in our view, that ruling was actually influenced.
That's a very strong statement to make. What proof do you have that this was influence? And at the same time, I would like to challenge you, because the same courts in 2017, when they ruled in your favor and nullified Kenya's election, when you were vying against Uhuru Kenyatta, you agreed with it. Now they say you do not have sufficient evidence to overturn an election, and you said you're influenced. People will say, you know, you're accepting only results which favor you and reject those which don't favor you.
We actually had more evidence this time than in 2017. You will have noticed when we were in court, our lawyers kept on demanding from the judges that, my lords, we have not been given access to the server. Our lawyers demanded that we be given access to the server where results had been transmitted so that they could go and audit the results to know if the results were authentic.
May I ask, sorry to interrupt you, but may I ask what server this is? Because for the first time, Kenyans saw results being transmitted straight from the polling station onto the Electoral Commission portal, and we could see everything real time. And now, which is this server you're referring to? The common public thinks that is the server. Is there another server you're referring to other than this?
Yes.
Because people think this was transparent.
Since that time, we have taken time and we have actually hired the services of experts who have actually come in and done what is called ethical hacking. And they have actually given us first the infrastructure of the transmission of the results. The results were being transmitted first from the polling station, where they had what you call Form 34A, to the server. Secondly, the 34A would be taken to the constituency tallying center, where there's a returning officer. And there the returning officer would originate what is called Form 34B. That would be scanned, the result, and then transmitted to the server. There are 290 constituencies. The chairman of the Electoral Commission had said that he would only announce the results after receiving 290 plus 1, that is diaspora, constituencies. That is what it is. But the reality is that there were 4 servers. There was one server which was in the Netherlands, Holland, in the clouds. Another server was in Venezuela. The other server was in what's called Anniversary Towers, the headquarters of the Electoral Commission. One was in industrial area. And finally, at the Tallying Center, Bomas of Kenya, was a portal. Now, the portal there at Bomas of Kenya was just receiving the results from the server. But the only server which was transmitting results to the portal at the Tallying Center was the one in Venezuela. And that is where the Venezuelans who had been arrested at the airport here with gadgets which were able to enter the IBC transmission system were doctoring results and transmitting to the portal here. This is the thing. So now this information, had we been allowed during the petition or during the court hearing to access the server, we would have been able to get this information. But the court, and through their registrar, refused to allow us to access the server. The company, which had been employed to provide the ICT infrastructure, called Smartmatics, wrote a letter saying that they could not allow our people, our experts, to the server because that would infringe their proprietary rights. So after this, we have the information, but then an insider, a staff of the Electoral Commission, whom he called himself the whistleblower, has come out with results which are authentic, because those are the results similar to the ones that we have.
People will question that authenticity. They'll say authenticity here is relative according to who we want to believe.
Yeah, but we're saying we challenge the IBC to, if they dispute this, to come out with the actual results, to produce the results from their server. They have not been able to produce the result up to now. But at that time, when the court made a ruling, you need to understand it properly. We said we don't agree with these results, but we respect the ruling of the court because we believe in the rule of law. That's what we said. But this now, subsequently, we now have information which were denied the time the hearing was taking place. So we, of course, therefore are justified in demanding that the server be opened so that we can be able to see. Another reason why this is happening, I told you that there are 7 members of the Electoral Commission. 3 said yes, 4 said no. Those 4 commissioners have still been hounded out of office. 3 of them were forced to resign. 1 was taken through a kangaroo tribunal, eventually kicked out. Appointed by Mr. Ruto himself. And handed out of office. We feel that those people have been very unfairly treated because they enjoyed security of tenure. They're members of an independent commission. So the fact that they differed in opinion with the chairman of the commission do not make them become criminals. So that is one. That's why we're saying that they should be reinstated. Further, Mr. Ruto has subsequently proceeded now to appoint a panel to select new commissioners. The 3 who had said yes, their time had expired. The 4 who would have remained have been sacked. So therefore, is now moving ahead, trying to form a commission, which is basically a William Ruto commission, because he has changed the law in terms of constitution, he has changed the law in terms of the constitution of.
It's okay. We can continue after your sports. You are saying the president has changed the constitution?
No, he has not changed the constitution. There's a law which had been actually negotiated between the ruling party and the opposition, how a panel which is supposed to nominate the electoral commissioners is to be constituted. He brought an amendment in Parliament abusing his so-called majority to change that law, so that now that composition consists mainly with these appointees, and therefore is going to end up with an electoral commission, which is basically a William Ruto commission. So we have said that this is not fair. In other words, they are trying to pre-rig the 2027 elections up front right now. And we are saying this is not acceptable. So, and because of these reasons, all these reasons taken together, that's why we're talking about electoral justice. And the reason why we said that we don't recognize Mr. Ruto is because we have now got evidence to show, without any fear of contradiction, that he did not win the elections in 2022.
And now that begs the question, now what happens next? You say you have new evidence, new information, which in terms of court process is useless because the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, had pronounced itself. President Ruto, I assume, has no intention of leaving office. You want him to leave office. Kenya is in state of tension and chaos right now. How does this end?
Well, we're saying that we must find a solution to this. We must bring to an end this issue of election rigging in Africa. We cannot be having double standards. I've asked some European diplomats here, if this were to happen in any member of EU country, that elections are held, then there's a division among the members of the Electoral Commission. 4 out of 7 say no, only 3 say yes. Asked if those elections would be deemed to be credible. They said no. He said, in fact, such a country would be suspended from membership of the EU until the matter is resolved. And I said, but why is it? Oh, because Africa is different. Africa is being judged by different standards. And we are saying, no, Africa must be judged by the same standard by which you judge other developed democracies. If elections are held, let them be free and fair and transparent, and let the winner be declared the winner. So we're not just people who are ranting that, oh, you lost elections, wait for 2027. No. I'm saying, I've not even said that I want to run again in 2027. But if I'm supporting a candidate running in 2027, I must be sure that that candidate has a chance of winning elections. There will be no point in me supporting somebody who does not have a chance from the beginning. And this is what Mr. Ruto is trying to do today. He rigged last time, he was rigged in, now he's preparing himself to rig himself in 2027. And this is not acceptable, not only by Raila Odinga, but by the majority of the people of Kenya.
Before we even get to 2027, Mr. Odinga, there is a country to save. It is really on the brink. Do you see a situation where Raila Odinga and President William Ruto sit down at a table to talk this out instead of the chaos you're seeing on the streets?
I've said that there are conditions which must be fulfilled before we can have any meaningful discussions. Okay? First, Mr. Ruto must stop looking at opposition in a derogative manner. He has invaded the opposition. We, as Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, had a majority of members of the National Assembly. We had a majority of members of County Assembly, also senators and governors. But as soon as he was declared the winner, he embarked on a process of basically dismembering the opposition, buying members. Within no time, it brought members, so it now has an artificial majority. People who had been elected on a Azimio ticket are now members, are now voting with Mr. Ruto. He calls members of parliament to State House under the disguise that they are going to get development. They are bribed there in the State House, so when they come,
Again, that would be hard to prove, just putting it out there.
yes, but there's no other logical reason to prove otherwise. So what we're saying is that Mr. Ruto must first respect multi-party democracy. That if a member was elected in a particular party, even the late Mr. Moi used to respect that rule. If this member is leaving the party to join the other party in government, he resigns his seat and goes back to the electorate to seek a fresh mandate. Note that, oh, I have not written a letter of resignation. That if somebody says that I'm now voting with this other side, I'm for all intents and purposes supporting the party in government, it should be deemed to have resigned from his party and be made to go and seek fresh mandate. That is a condition for a president. Secondly, he must agree that the server will be opened so that we can examine what is in the server. Okay? Thirdly, he must stop the reconstitution, the Electoral Commission, before we can sit down and talk. And of course, finally, he must agree to address jointly with us the issue of the cost of living of our people. Those are the conditions precedent.
If he doesn't?
Then there is no basis of negotiations. No basis of negotiations, and we'll continue to use our democratic rights to press for our rights as Kenyans, which is provided for in our constitution.
Mr. Raila Odinga, thank you very much for your time.